Hi folks, HR Funk here. Back in front of the camera with my recently acquired Remington Model 700 SPS Varmint rifle. The last time we saw this rifle was a couple of months ago, shortly after I purchased it, and I produced a couple of videos back at that time where I was taking a close-up look at this rifle and comparing it to my older work rifle, my older Model 700P, and also trying to see if it looked like Remington has recaptured some of the quality of their firearms that they had back in the day before they went through the bankruptcy and all that. And overall, my assessment of this rifle as it came from the factory was, it's okay. It's not bad, but it's not superb. Now, in all fairness to the rifle and to Remington, there are higher grade versions of the Remington 700 that are currently being made. This is the lowest tier. Actually, no, not quite the exact lowest tier. This is the first step up from the lowest tier of the 700 varmint rifles. And again, overall, it's not bad, but there are quite a few things I think that could be done to improve the performance of this rifle. Now, in the testing that I did previously, this rifle, accuracy-wise, is hovering right around 1 minute of angle on average for 5-shot groups. And there was a time not all that long ago when 1 MOA accuracy from a factory rifle would have been considered pretty good. But times have changed and expectations have changed, and nowadays I would say that's sort of so-so. It's not bad, but it's certainly not as good as I would like to see accuracy from a rifle of this type. And I say of this type because specifically this is a heavy-barreled varmint variant of this rifle. So it needs to be a very accurate version of the Model 700. If this were more of a hunting grade rifle that needed to be minute of deer accurate or something like that, then I wouldn't be quite as critical of it. In fact, if this was a very thin-barreled hunting style Remington 700 and I was getting right around 1 MOA accuracy with it, I'd be pretty happy. But again, for a heavy-barreled varmint rifle, that's kind of so-so. So what I've been planning on doing for a while now as a winter project was changing some things about this rifle to see if I can improve its accuracy. And in this video, what I'm going to be doing is identifying the things that I'm going to be changing and telling you why I'm going to be changing them, and also a little bit of an explanation, I guess, of my thoughts on rifle accuracy and what needs to be done to maximize it. So here we go. So for the terms of this discussion, when I talk about rifle accuracy, I am talking about the mechanical accuracy of the rifle itself, not the shooter's ability to accurately put shots on target. Those are two different things, and I'm going to be focusing on the mechanical accuracy of the rifle. And in terms of rifle accuracy or mechanical accuracy, what we're really talking about is the measurement of consistency when it comes to the ability of the rifle and ammunition to cause a bullet's path to transect with a certain point in space. That's what we're trying to accomplish. Through physical means, we are actuating a mechanism which causes a chemical reaction that propels a projectile through the mechanism and launches it into the atmosphere with the expectation that the projectile is going to transect that certain point in space. When you think about it in those terms, there are a lot of things going on, and there are myriad variables that can have an influence on that bullet's point of impact with our target. Literally, the amount of coffee a factory worker had on a particular morning a couple of years ago when they were producing primers could have an influence on where your bullet strikes today when you fire your rifle. So there are some variables, like the amount of coffee that a worker drinks, that are just out of our control, but there are some variables that we can influence and potentially mitigate in order to improve the consistency and thereby the accuracy of our rifle platform. So that's what I'm going to be talking about as we work our way through this discussion. As I work my way through the changes I'm going to be making to the rifle, these are in no particular order, and this is not necessarily the order in which the future videos that I produce in this series are going to progress, but I am going to be talking about all the various different things that I'm going to be modifying. The first thing I'll mention is the scope itself. I may be switching to a different optic. I have not made up my mind yet. There's nothing wrong with this loophole scope. In fact, this is a very good scope, but there's another one I'm thinking about trying. So you may or may not see this scope the next time I go out to the range when I've made the other changes to this rifle. Now, regardless of whether or not I change the scope, there is something I'm going to be changing, and you can see that right here, and that's my scope mounting base. Reason being, these are worn bases, and they would probably be perfectly fine for a hunting scope somewhere with a magnification range of 3 to 9 or what have you. But the problem that I run into with this optic and its range of magnification is the scope really needs to be moved a little farther forward in order for me to get a full image in the ocular lens. And I can't move it any farther forward. I cannot move the scope in the rings because I'm nearly up against the scope ring here with the magnification ring. And there are no slots, obviously, anywhere that I can move this rear scope ring into to move the scope. So I'm going to be replacing this with a full-length rail, which should allow me to move the scope. In fact, it by all means will allow me to move the scope slightly farther forward. I'll be able to have that full-size image in my ocular lens. And when I don't have that, the problem that I run into is I'll have a little bit of a scope shadow somewhere, and that little bit of scope shadow can cause some degradation of your accuracy on the target. So I want to eliminate that by properly positioning the scope, and that should take that problem away. It will also eliminate one other problem that really doesn't have anything to do with accuracy, but it's a little bit of a nuisance, and I will have to reposition the camera slightly in order to be able to show you. This might be difficult to see, but I can't fire the rifle with this scope cover in place because there's not sufficient room for it to position itself on the objective lens without coming into contact with the barrel. Now, when the scope cover is not in place, there is no contact between the scope's objective bell and the barrel, so that doesn't cause a problem. As I said, this is more of an annoyance than anything else, but by moving this scope slightly farther forward, that will eliminate that problem altogether. The next thing I'm going to be replacing is this Remington factory stock. And I really have to say, I don't know why Remington would ever put this type of a stock on a varmint rifle. If they were using this on a hunting rifle that didn't need to have quite the level of accuracy that a varmint rifle does, then maybe I could understand that. But this stock is flimsy, is the only word that I can use to describe it. There is flex in the stock itself when the rifle is fired, which allows the action to move somewhat. It also really does not properly allow me to get a good sight picture as I'm looking through this scope. It needs to be a little higher back here. Now I could build it up with something, but there is no adjustable comb, no anything like that. So it does not allow me to get the type of hold on the rifle that I need to have proper cheek weld, proper stock weld, proper eye position, all that, and be able to fire my most accurate shots possible. The other problem with this stock, and I will have to reposition the camera slightly as I talk about this. The other problem involves the stock's relationship to the barreled action itself. First off, there is no bedding of any sort in this stock. It is simply screwed down with the action resting against the plastic, so it's not getting a great deal of support. And there's some flex, as I said, to this stock, which is going to allow the action to move when the cartridge is fired, and that is going to allow some deviation in the bullet's point of impact all the way when it gets to the target. The other issue is that the stock does not allow the barrel to be free floated, and I demonstrated this in an earlier video. In fact, I'll grab something right now and demonstrate it again. So here I have a nice thin piece of paper, and we can see that it absolutely will not squeeze between the stock and the barrel. There is contact between the stock and the barrel, and this does a couple of different things. None of them are good when it comes to improving accuracy. When the cartridge is fired, the barrel vibrates. This is known as barrel harmonics. And the barrel, as it vibrates, causes the muzzle to move slightly, and I've had this described to me by people that have high-speed video as looking like sort of a figure eight when it's viewed under those very high-speed conditions. Assuming the bullet achieves the exact same velocity and spends the exact same amount of time in the barrel, if the barrel is allowed to move freely, the bullet should exit the muzzle at the exact same point every single time, so that the beginning of the bullet's flight is always the same. So assuming that it's not influenced by wind or other environmental factors, it should strike the target in the same place. When there is contact between the stock and the barrel, it does not allow the barrel to vibrate naturally. It impedes that vibration, and that causes a difference in the way the bullet leaves the muzzle. I hope that makes sense. I'm not trying to overly complicate this. But the short version of the story is contact between the barrel and the stock is not good when it comes to accuracy. The other problem when there's contact between the stock and the barrel comes from the rifle being used with a rest of any sort, whether it's a bipod or rested on bags or what have you. Any pressure exerted on the stock is going to be bearing also on the barrel itself. And if there's a change in that pressure, for example, if one time the shooter loads the bipod a little bit more than the next time, that's going to also change the way the barrel moves and cause the bullet to depart the muzzle in a slightly different place. So, as I mentioned early on in the video, accuracy is a measurement of consistency. So by allowing a free float of the barrel, we are going to improve the consistency of the barrel's ability to vibrate normally, and we should see that as an improvement in accuracy. I've got to say, folks, when it comes to producing an accurate rifle, and I mentioned this a little while ago, I don't know why Remington would use this stock, other than the fact that they are probably very inexpensive. That's the only reason I can think of. I really wish that they would just sell the barreled action and it would come sans stock so that the shooter could get whatever stock they wanted to mount the action in. Obviously, if they did that, they would need to reduce the price by whatever this stock costs. I suspect that would probably not be a whole lot. The last thing that I'm going to be changing is this Remington X-Mark Pro factory trigger. I mentioned in the previous videos that Remington themselves have stopped using this trigger, and they're going to be issuing a Timney trigger in all the Remington 700s that were manufactured after, I believe, July of 2023. This rifle was obviously manufactured before that, and when I was initially testing this trigger here in the shop, I didn't think it felt too bad, but when I got to the range and started shooting it, I noticed a very definite tick in the trigger, which right there was movement. Maybe I can show you this if I use my trigger finger there. Notice that movement prior to the trigger releasing, which is distracting when you're shooting. And I also noticed some inconsistency on this trigger when I had it out at the range. I would have one shot where I would be slowly applying pressure, and there you just notice that trigger move, and the trigger would break. Then I would cycle the action, and on the next shot it seemed like I just touched the trigger and it would fire. So that inconsistency also shows up on the target as shots that are sort of wandering all over the place. I want to eliminate that, so that trigger is going to be going bye-bye, and I'm going to be replacing it with hopefully something that's a whole lot better. So there you go, folks. That's going to do it for part 1 of this series on improving the accuracy of my Remington Model 700 SPSV. In the next part, I'm going to start actually making some of the changes that I was talking about today. Until then, if you have any questions or comments about this video, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, if you purchase anything from Optics Planet, be sure to use my discount code, which is... And if you use that discount code, it'll save you 7% on your purchase from Optics Planet. And I want to say thanks to Optics Planet for partnering with me on this project. The products that you're going to see me using in the upcoming video have come from Optics Planet, and thanks again to all the folks there for helping me out. Also, don't forget House of Pain, either House of Pain Armament or House of Pain Munition. If you go there, you can use my discount code, which is HRFUNK10, and that'll save you some money on your purchase from House of Pain. And remember the Target sponsor from the channel. Go to Target's online, check out their inventory, and see if they have anything that's going to meet your Target needs. See you next time, folks. And until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.